Not content with your content? You've come to the right place. The DisContent Show with Joe Kuzma. Every brand starts with a story. Here's how you can grow your business by sharing it. Now, with today's topic, the host of the DisContent Show, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DisContent Show. My name is Joe Kuzma, and as always, here with tips and tricks to help with your content marketing. Specifically today, for those of you who are interested in podcasting, I have a special guest. Her name is Kelly Glover, and she's the CEO with the Talent Squad. Kelly has 18 years of experience working with media. She's been a celebrity interviewer, talent agent, radio host, and a podcast producer. And I'm happy to have her here today because her expertise is teaching you on how to be a podcast guest and how that could benefit your brand and business. Kelly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thank you for having me on the show, Joe.
You know, I'm going to steal a Dave Ramsey quote and say better than I deserve, which is kind of true. But yeah, you know what? Why don't we tell some of our listeners a little bit? I gave a little bit of your background here, just a synopsis, but tell us a little bit about yourself and the Talent Squad.
Sure. So the Talent Squad is a podcasting agency, and we book podcast tours for entrepreneurs. So you might notice by my accent, I'm Australian, but I actually went to college in Ohio University, and did my internships in Hollywood in Los Angeles. So I was an entertainment reporter doing all the celebrity interviews on the red carpet, worked for Miramax, worked for a talent agency, and then ended up as a radio announcer. So I hosted a syndicated show. Now, all this was before Facebook, before Google Maps, before podcasts. Podcasts were invented, and now I work in podcasting. So it's a testament to you can end up in a career doing something that isn't even invented yet, which is pretty amazing.
You know, that's kind of the way my career path has gone too. I went from like IT to web developer, and you know, a lot of people, some people don't even have websites these days. They might, if they have like let's say a food service business, they have like a Yelp page at the best, you know what I mean? Or a Facebook page or something like that. So I found myself in content marketing and social media based on my background. I also went to college in Ohio as well, but a little further north than you did. I was at Youngstown State University. So
yes,
but
I know. Yeah, I know Ohio. I know Youngstown.
Yes. So I was a Penguin. You're a Bobcat.
Bobcat. Yeah. Not many people know. They're like, oh, Buckeyes. I'm like, no, Bobcat.
That's the other one.
Down the road.
Not the Ohio one. State University. Yeah, a little down the
road. Wait.
Yes,
Don't even get me started with the.
Not a problem. But yeah, you know, it's part of the thing here. And, you know, I speak to I speak to anyone that's in a variety of different business sizes from small to large. This could be a side hustle, hobby, or something they're genuinely interested in doing for a career. So it's interesting you mentioned podcasting, and, you know, it's one of those things where, yeah, it didn't exist. And a lot of people kind of like the word blog. I mean, people think it's like a dirty word. They may not understand it, you know, and I know you really focus on podcast interviews, but tell us a little bit before we get into that. I don't know if I want to go as far as to say what is podcasting, but podcasting is something that's becoming very popular, and there are many reasons for that because it's on demand, it's on the go. It's kind of like, you know, almost like a Netflix sort of thing without a real subscription payment to it for most of them, that you could just pick up and go and listen to, you know, on-demand radio programs is essentially the way I would describe it to someone. Is that kind of like the way you feel like with podcasts? And how do I want to say this? Where do you see podcasts going, you know, from this point forward? And how do you best describe podcasts to someone that may have never even heard the word before?
Okay, so yeah, there's a few things in that, Joe. I started podcasting in 2007. So we're recording this in 2020. So that's 13 years ago. When I started, it was pulling my radio show off the logger after it had been aired, taking out the music, taking out commercials. That was a podcast. Back then, people thought of podcasting as a guy under a blanket in his basement talking to his friends about video games for 3 hours just amongst themselves. It has come a lot, which is fine, but it's come a long way since then. And now I think everybody knows the word podcasting, and it's common to listen to it. And it's gone from amateur into a professionalization, where I see people on the evening news say, hey, by the way, I've got a podcast. So it's definitely gone into the mainstream now. And you're right, it's all about niche. So while you're watching TV, flipping through, looking at all the channels, that's broad. So I can watch a show with my mum, with my niece. But in podcasting, I might listen to a show and it's so, like, it could be on escalators. It could be on succulents. It could be on podcasting. It could be on, it's so niche. So it's really narrowcast on demand is the way to think about it. And you and I, we're not going to be on the evening news. They pick two people in a city and that's it. But a podcast, the barrier to entry is low and anybody can start and produce it themselves, get a podcast up and running in a day, and anyone in the world can listen to it. You don't have to be in Athens, Ohio to watch that news report or to listen, well, to the news report you do, but to listen to the podcast, you could be in Sydney, Australia, or where I am now in Los Angeles, and I can listen to that at 2 a.m. in the morning in 2 years' time. So that's the beauty of podcasting. It's narrow, it's niche, it's on demand, it's evergreen, and it's accessible.
Well, hopefully mostly evergreen, unless you cover sports stuff, which I've done some journalism or, things of that nature, news and stuff like that. Maybe not as evergreen, but it all depends. Like an interview like this, absolutely. Somebody could be listening to this. You mentioned 2020, they could be listening to this 2 years from now, and a lot of the information would still be relevant. But for some people that are a little leery still, I say this a lot on this program. I say, hey, don't worry about, be good, not great, because if you obsess and overthink about doing some things, you're never gonna get it done. It's almost the Nike slogan, just do it. And you could easily, like you said, the barriers to entry, you don't have to find a terrestrial radio station in order to find a spot at 2 a.m. and record to only like a narrow base of people that are within a certain geographic region, kind of like how you said, like maybe a news station. So this is something that can be worldwide, it can be global, and it's on demand, which is great. But I know there are some people that are out there that are still thinking, this is too much for me to do. What do I buy a microphone? Do I do all of this? You pretty much focus on taking someone and having them be a guest on another podcast, correct? That's what your focus is.
So we equate it to, you can either throw the party or you can be a guest at somebody else's party. And if you think you might want to start your own podcast, there are a lot of moving parts. It is a lot of busy work, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. So if you're not ready for that, what you can do is go on a podcast tour and guest on other people's shows before you launch your own, or you may never want to launch your own. I don't have my own podcast. I go on other people's shows. And that way you're reaching their audience, which is already niche, established, and curated. You get a warm introduction to the host, but it still helps with your authority, credibility, reputation, and influence. And so what you can do, every show you go on is different, so you can observe how that host is doing it. What's their workflow? How's it going? And if you go on 10, 15, 20 podcasts and then you still decide, you've got best practices from all those shows that you've been across. So it's learning from other people, but also instead of starting from scratch and nurturing your own audience, you can leverage other people's audiences. And if you do have a show, guess what? You've been on those 12 shows or whatever. You've already got a list of 12 people that you can invite on your show that has their own audience for cross-promotion.
Oh, absolutely. Pretty much kind of widening that circle. I'd say a circle of friends, but it's your network. You know what I mean? And so that helps you out too, because if they have an audience and it's in that same niche, it's like overlapping circles, and then you could draw with your finger a big circle around all of that, and that in theory could be your audience or at least your reach. So this is something that you help people find shows that they can be guests on, correct?
Yeah, we work in a number of ways. So we have a select group of clients that we work with, and we book them on podcast tours. So 12 is an easy number to work with. There's agencies, and they'll do 4 a month. So you can either hire an agency like us, the Talent Squad. You can pitch and book yourself. You can get a virtual assistant to do it. or you can get a team member to do it. They're pretty much the common ways of doing it. But I would suggest that getting yourself booked on podcasts is about step 4 or 5. So before you even do that, you have to ask yourself, who am I talking to? What do I want them to do as a result of hearing me on the show? And then make sure you've got your messaging and talking points ready along with your one sheet and press kit. Because yes, you can send an email, but unless the subject line is right, the pitch is right, you've got all the assets right, it will actually damage your brand. And you don't want to go and send, hi, insert host name. I loved episode 431. That was amazing. And here's all the great stuff about me. I want to come on your show. Because that's not going to work. And you'll put a lot of time into that. Like, it takes time. And
Yes.
if you're putting in the time, you want to make sure that it's beneficial, because it's not one for one. You don't send one pitch and get one yes. You can often spend dozens of pitches to get a yes. So it's a lot of work, and even sending a pitch is part of personal branding, and you don't want to get it wrong because that will damage your personal brand. So there's the preparation, there's the pitch, there's getting the yes, then there's the interview prep, going on the show, and then, of course, nailing the interview. And then after that, it's when it goes live, you need to promote, leverage, and repurpose. So it's more than just, I want to get on a podcast. It's a full strategy. But if you do all those things right, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that was, that's my next question I was going to ask for those who are thinking, well, why should I be on a podcast? Why would I want someone to interview me? Can you speak to some of those benefits of being, interviewed on a podcast?
Yeah, so it helps your personal branding. Most shows have show notes so that it helps with your SEO. It gives link back. So when people are searching, they may actually find you through a podcast and not your website. It's what we said about amplifying your message, but the amplification is only as good as the messages, and that goes back to the prep of, if your message isn't great, if it's not consistent across platforms, that'll be a problem. So you need to make sure you have all your messaging, your talking points, your sound bites, your hooks. It's a way to communicate your expertise, so it's credibility, reputation. It actually really is influence. We use the word influencer these days, but I only think that is if somebody actually takes action to do something that you've really had influence. It strengthens your personal brand, and a benefit is it's one-to-one. It's so it's a one-to-one high-end networking with the host, but also the audience is just me and them right now, and them and you right now, as opposed to in a room full of 100 people for 20 minutes, which is fine. Everybody loves speaking. It's amazing. So another benefit is podcasting is essentially a speaking gig you can do without leaving the house. So there's no travel, there's no conference tickets, there's no time away from your kids. If you have an awesome conference spot at 2:00 on a Tuesday, the only people that are going to hear that are the people that happen to be in that city at 2:00 on a Tuesday. Maybe it's 500 people. Great. But if you do that podcast, anyone can listen to this anytime from now on for the next X amount of years that you leave it up. So I would say that access to those niche, established and curated audiences is pretty big. And the audience is engaged. If, like, we all go through social, I'll scroll through Instagram, I'll scroll through Facebook, I'll read an article, I might watch a video for a few minutes. But with podcasting, it's something I'm looking for or already know the host. And if it's the host, it's a warm introduction. It's like, oh, well, Joe knows Kelly. He chose her to be on the show. She must be all right because he says she's all right. I'll give it a listen.
Well, I was hoping so anyway.
But yeah. Well, if a host only has 52 spots a year, they've only got 52 yeses that they can give out.
That's correct.
So really, it is quite competitive to be one of those 52 spots. And the other benefit of podcasting, it's 30 to 60 minutes, Joe. And people look at it as an entirety. So I'm in the middle of a podcast. You don't say I'm in the middle of a blog article. You don't say I'm in the middle of a YouTube video. You watch it and you finish it and you move on. Mm-hmm. But with podcast, I might listen to it on the way to my co-working space, and then I'll listen to the rest of it later. So that's 30 to 60 minutes. And you can tell by my voice, you love me or you hate me. you think I know what I'm talking about, or you think I'm full of it. Absolutely. Either way, it's a win for both of us, because you like me or you dislike me, and we're not going to waste each other's time. And you're either going to want to go on another date with me. I'm not asking you to marry me on the first listen, but you'll either like, yeah, I want to hear more, or no, I don't. You'll move on and find someone that suits you. And you can really get that from someone's voice. Are they genuine? Are they excited? You can't get that from writing. So that's a benefit. And then there's personal benefits of It's helping your media experience. It helps you refine your message. You'll know what hits. You'll know what doesn't. You know what people like, what they don't like. So it's helping you in your media from here on out, because every interview you're getting better and better and better and refining and refining and refining.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you have someone that produces these programs, somebody professionally, not just recording it, willy nilly, I would say, you don't have to even worry about. I deal with a lot of people where we have interviews, or I help record and produce other shows, and they're so concerned about being nervous. You know what I mean? And it's like there's at first some people they might be, but there's usually ways they could go in and I could trim out some dead space, or if they blank out or anything like that. So if you're dealing with somebody reputable in that aspect too, you don't have to worry about, am I going to look like, am I going to look foolish? Am I going to sound foolish on here? And I like how you did bring up, especially when you're dealing with like articles and blogs, as much as I love to write, I'm a very creative writer. It's one of my strengths. I understand that, with podcasts, people will listen to far more audio content. That's why audiobooks are so big right now too. Than they'll read. People tend to skim. You said, scrolling through social media, and you don't get that interpersonal kind of back and forth, just like we have right here. But another thing too that I like that you brought up, and this leads into the kind of the next topic here, is podcast interviews they're just not about how many downloads do you have, how many listens do you have, how many views do you have, because when you're in a specific niche, like you said, if you're somewhere on Tuesday at 2:00 and you have a room full of 500 people, those are 500 people that are engaged and interested in your specific topic. Well, some people may get discouraged if they only have 500 listens, let's say, on a specific podcast. But then again, those are 500 people who are they're interested in what you have to say specifically. That also has to probably go hand in hand with who you hook people up with for interviews too, because if I'm talking about, let's say painting, you're not going to put me on a baseball podcast as a guest, unless I'm painting baseball players, and then it kind of relates back and forth. So, it's something there too where it has to relate. But tell me a little bit about your thoughts. I kind of inserted some of my own thoughts there, but talk about, why podcast interviews aren't about maybe the most downloads or views.
Everything you said, yes. Everything you said, yes. So, yeah, and especially about the 500. People will be like, I want to be on the Tim Ferriss show or nothing. I want to be on Vaynerchuk or I'm not doing it.
Oh, geez.
And that's broad. And that's for everybody. And like you said, would you travel to Columbus, Ohio to be in a room of 500 people? Yeah, you would. So I don't know why people say, well, I'm going on Tim Ferriss or nothing, and a podcast with 500 downloads an episode isn't good enough, because if they are your ideal client, they're actually great. And depending on what your product is, everyone has a course, $497, $997, whatever. All you need is one person to buy that course, because the downloads, when people if people are looking for a CPM, that's like cost per 1,000 listens, it's usually $25 if they want to make money from a podcast, which I know that's not guessing, but it's just a bit of perspective. You have to have 1,000 listens to make $100. So if you have 500 people and you can make $500 or $1,000, you're already winning with far less people listening to the show. So it's not about the mass, it's about the niche. Yes. And it's about engaged, and it's about them getting to know you, and it's about them listening to you on Joe's show, listening to on Kelly's show. They might listen to a few shows, read a blog post, do the thing, and then they come and they just buy off you. So that's what it's about. And you want someone that likes you and knows you and is ready for a yes, instead of them not being sure and trying to force them into something after one episode. So I think that's a mistake people make, is I want to go on a podcast and I want them to buy the thing after listening to one episode. It doesn't work that way. Podcast is earned media. It's not an advertisement. It's not a commercial. So thinking about it that way, and thinking about giving, it's all about giving and showing your expertise and letting people know what you know and teaching. It's not a commercial. So if that's what you're after, then I would think this may not be the strategy for you, and have a little bit of a think about where you want to spend your time effort and dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you kind of went into the return on investment there as well. We spoke about building your brand. You were talking about CPMs. So, we kind of already got into that. So I guess I'll jump into, my last question for you is, what might someone want to do if they want to get started being a podcast guest? What are the first steps?
Yeah, so I think I want to be on a podcast, like we said, is about step 4. So let's go all the way back to step 1. And what you need to do is be really self-aware and do a self-audit. Okay, what do I look like online? What do my pictures look like? What's my messaging look like? Is it consistent everywhere? If I was a producer and went back and cross-checked and verified, what are they seeing? Would I book myself as a guest on a show? If the answer is no, that's fine. Just go and do a little tweaks on a few things. You've already got bits and pieces of your platform, but make it really solid and consistent across. And then think, what are my expertise? What are my frequently asked questions that people ask me the most? And you need to break that down into talking points, because a topic won't get you booked. You can't say, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm never going to book that. I was a producer for a podcasting network, produced mid-6-figure shows, millions of downloads for 12 episodes. And if someone pitched me saying, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm awesome, I want to talk about entrepreneurship, that's a hard no. So you need to, because it's so generalist.
Yes. That's
not teaching me anything. That's not giving me any story. That's not showing any benefit to my audience. So think like a producer. And if it was 5 mistakes you made and how to, you know what I mean? Think about all those hooky headlines that you get. And at the Talent Squad, we call it clickbait that actually delivers. And clickbait is a dirty word, but the key is delivers.
Yes.
So that thing you scroll through and you're like, oh, then you're like, I have to know. And you scroll back up and then you click it, but then you feel let down. You want that, oh, I have to know, click it. But when you click, it needs to be like, boom. And you feel like you've gotten the payoff and the reward and it's amazing and it was so worth it. That's what you're looking for. So if you can't see your subject line or your talking points in an email and want to click it yourself, then you probably need to rethink. So it's coming up with a collection of topics and talking points. And you make no mistake, podcasts, yes, they are considered self-published, and it's most people that have a business, but it's still media. So treat it like media and treat it like you're going on the Today Show, and that will up-level you to the host, the producer, and the assistants, and it will just make you a better guest.
I had actually mentioned earlier the be good, not great, but I also, another big thing that ties into that is consistency. And I like how you just mentioned, take a look at what you have as far as if you have any kind of marketing materials, particularly anyone that's going to look for you is going to look online these days. We're no longer,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're no longer, the yellow page phone book where you name your business 123 ABC and you're the first listing and somebody just picks up the phone. Doesn't work like that anymore. So make sure everything looks clean, looks professional. And like I said, sometimes, don't overthink these things. You don't have to. They don't have to be necessarily great for what you're thinking. Your expectations of yourself are always, you're always going to place yourself higher, on a higher level than others might see you. So as long as you're thinking on the good level, more than likely it's going to be good enough, unless you have a really low bar set and then, you may need some help. But ask some other people what they may think too. I'm sure if you're even thinking about getting involved with this, you probably know other people within your own business network, within your own personal network that you trust that will give you a good evaluation and say, well, you know what, this looks a little weird. Or I've even had some circumstances too where I go on a website and maybe they even have like a templated website and the website looks real professional. All of a sudden I click on something and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? So those are real tiny things that could be a detriment, especially if you're shooting for the stars and trying to get on a very large program like you were saying. And also, you have to have that pitch very much narrowed down. I know when I received your email, actually, it was great. I mean, it was a few paragraphs. It explained who you were, what you do, some of your credentials. You had an attachment with it too. So, I mean, it was all great. And I said, oh yeah, you know what? This is excellent. We talked and now we're finally here. And that's how it works. So, Kelly, I want some people to know how they could find you, how they could follow you if they're interested in, any more information that you put out there, or potentially even looking into hiring the Talent Squad.
Yeah, so thetalentsquad.com And if you go there, I've written a ton of blog articles and there's videos too, and they will break down, like you can tell I'm pretty straight shooter. I just give the facts, you know what I mean? So that will help you decide, what am I ready for? Where am I? What do I want to do? Because yeah, you can hire an agency. Yes, you can do it yourself. It just depends on where you are, what your budget is. But I really do believe podcast guesting is absolutely great for everyone, especially introverts, because you're doing it from your house or from your office. So really consider it, because the time to get into podcast guesting is yesterday. So
yeah.
thetalentsquad.com.
Yes, the Talent Squad, and that's great. The time to get into it was yesterday, and a few of the other things too, because I was, I'm always talking about some of the things you could do on your own, such as blogging, podcasting, or anything of that nature, even with social media. But when you're a guest, then you don't have the same kind of responsibilities or overhead, whether you're producing the show yourself or hiring someone to produce your own show. And it's something where you could set aside time, maybe once a month or every other month, and be a guest somewhere else, and that's all the more it takes. And you don't have to do all of the, what do you want to say, the grunt work, rolling up your sleeves and everything on your own, and really overwhelming yourself if you already have all kinds of other responsibilities and hats that you wear aside from your own career. You may be a family person and everything else, and it's just one thing that you don't want to get too overwhelmed with and burn yourself out on. So this is a really great idea to get into being a podcast guest. And once again, I'd like to thank you, Kelly Glover, the CEO with the Talent Squad, for being on the show today.
Thank you, Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
No problem. And as I'd like to remind everyone as well out there, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe no matter where you're listening. And thank you for listening, because, I truly appreciate it, as does Kelly. Until next time, my name is Joe, and I encourage all the listeners out there to be safe, be good, and I'll catch you later. Hi folks, this is Joe Kuzma. No, don't worry, you're not hearing things twice. I'm just here to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening to today's show and being a follower and subscriber of the DisContent podcast. And I want to remind you that if you're interested in more information about all the various things it is that I do, whether it be about this show, content marketing, or you want to ask a question, you may visit me at joekuzma.com. That's JOEKUZMA.com. Or you can follow me as well on Facebook. Make sure you get the page and not the personal profile. Sorry, it's only for friends and family. Also on Twitter at Joe_Kuzma, LinkedIn or Instagram. Also, don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe, whether that be on iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast provider, so you don't miss out on any of the great episodes that we have. Once again, thank you again for your support, and I look forward, as always, to speaking and interacting with each of you again soon.